Humans are hardwired to dream, to create, to innovate. Each of us seeks to do work that gives us purpose, to write a great novel, to make a discovery, to build strong communities, and to care for the sick. The urge to connect to the core of our work lives in all of us. But today, we spend too much time consumed by the drudgery of work on tasks that zap our time, creativity, and energy. To reconnect to the soul of our work, we don't just need a better way of doing the same things. We need a whole new way to work. Introducing Microsoft 365 Copilot, your Copilot for work. It combines the power of large language models with your data in the Microsoft Graph and the Microsoft 365 apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet. Copilot combines the power of large language models with your data in the Microsoft Graph and the Microsoft 365 apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet. And it does so within their existing commitments to data security and privacy in the enterprise. Right now, we spend too much time on the drudgery of work and too little time and energy on the work that ignites our creativity and sparks joy. Copilot is integrated into Microsoft 365 in two ways. It works alongside you, embedded in the Microsoft 365 apps you use every day like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and more to unleash creativity, unlock productivity, and up-level skills. They're also announcing an entirely new experience called Business Chat. Business Chat works across the LLM, the Microsoft 365 apps, and your data like your calendar, emails, chats, documents, meetings, and contacts to do things you've never been able to do before. You can give it natural language prompts like, "Tell my team how we updated the product strategy," and it will generate a status update based on the morning's meetings, emails, and chat threads. Recent GitHub data shows that among developers who have used GitHub Copilot, 88% say they are more productive, 77% say the tool helps them spend less time searching for information, and 74% say they can focus their efforts on more satisfying work.
Copilot in Microsoft 365 can help you unleash creativity at work. Imagine you need to create a rock-solid proposal to win the business, and you don't have time for writer's block. You can use Copilot to draft a proposal based on your customer notes in OneNote, as well as another internal document. Copilot scans the target files and gets to work, quickly generating a first draft with all the key details from the files you provided. Now, let's say you want this to look like your previous proposals. Copilot can give you a draft in the format you typically use. It inserts product images and pulls in relevant visuals from other files. You can include a short summary at the top of the document. And Copilot can make suggestions to strengthen the proposal, like adding an FAQ, which it will generate for you to refine.
Copilot in Excel helps you make sense of all your data. Say you need to analyze this quarter's sales results. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in. and helping you better understand what's happening. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model and even asks if you want to learn more about what it did with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot in Excel turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm a Senior Enterprise Advocate at GitHub, and I want to talk today about GitHub Copilot and how it helps me as a developer. You see, I became a developer because the job seemed like it was an awful lot of fun. And oftentimes it is. But there's also an awful lot of tedium. What I want to be able to do is solve the big problems and come up with unique solutions. But what I really find myself doing a lot is writing boilerplate code, dealing with obscure syntax, and having to learn an awful lot of new languages and frameworks. Copilot can eliminate the repetition. It can help keep me in the flow by reducing the number of times that I have to leave my IDE to go look something up. So how does it do this magic? Well, let's take a look. I have here a Python Django application. And Python Django is a great web framework that's built for creating front ends to back end databases. The first thing that I need is a model, and this can be repetitive code. So using natural language, I can describe what I want. I can say create a model called speaker with name, email, and LinkedIn URL. And now we get some gray italicized text that is my code suggestion from Copilot. It's suggesting this class speaker, I hit tab to accept it, and then I notice an entire class suggestion from Copilot, all based on that one sentence comment. I hit tab to accept, and now that's been built for me. Now, how does GitHub Copilot make its magic happen? Well, it's based on a training model that consists of billions of lines of publicly available code and text. That allows it to synthesize that natural language comment into a code suggestion. It's also able to make suggestions that follow best practices. It's a very common best practice in Django, for example, to override the string function, so that way we can get a string representation of an instance of an object. And sure enough, in that suggestion that Copilot made, it went ahead and included that. We also notice that Copilot is able to read my code and make suggestions based on that. So it gives me a suggestion down below of a brand new comment to create a talk model because it saw that I had a speaker. It goes, hey, wait a minute, you've got this speaker, they probably need to do something, here's a talk for you. And I can loop through a couple of different suggestions that it might be making based on what it sees, and then hit tab to accept. So I'm going to accept that comment, I hit return, I hit tab to accept the next part, and then hit tab to accept the entire class that it's now generated for me. One of the other big places where Copilot shines in keeping me in the zone is helping to reduce the number of times that I have to go look up some bit of syntax. I, generally speaking, can get around regular expressions, but quite frequently, I need to go look up that syntax. But with Copilot, I can just stay in the flow. I can describe one more time in natural language what it is that I want. Let's say I want to add on a code field with a pattern of 3 uppercase letters, a dash, and 3 digits. And Copilot actually even suggested the rest of the way because it saw what it was that I was trying to do. And I hit return, and now Copilot will make a suggestion for me of a regular expression. So I didn't have to go look up that syntax. Copilot did that for me right here. GitHub Copilot works across languages and frameworks. We've already seen how it can help us out with a Python Django app. But what about, say, C# and a Web API app? Well, I have a model and validator and data context already set up, and I want to now create a controller. A controller that typically involves an awful lot of tedious boilerplate code. Well, I can just code like I normally would. I'll add in my speaker controller. I will begin to import in the appropriate namespace. So we'll say using, and then Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC, which you'll notice that Copilot is suggesting. It's also suggesting my Entity Framework Core. And now I need to go grab my data model. So I'll say using conference.data. And then now what you're gonna notice is that Copilot takes over the rest from here. It sets up my namespace for me. It adds in the appropriate attribute for API controller and sets up the route, and then generates the entire controller for me. I wrote maybe about a line and a quarter worth of code, and it took care of the rest for me. Now, when you see that gray italicized text, you might be thinking, gosh, that looks an awful lot like IntelliSense. And you might then be wondering, well, what's the difference between IntelliSense and Copilot? Well, IntelliSense is wonderful at making small suggestions. It can help remind me what the name of a variable is, or help point me at a particular method. But it does require that I get a big part of the way there, that I'm already starting to write my code. But with Copilot, I was able to say in natural language, this is what I want, and get an entire class suggested for me, something which IntelliSense isn't able to do. You also might be wondering, well, what about ChatGPT? And ChatGPT is a fantastic external tool, but it's going to lack context. Copilot knew that I was creating a Django application, and the code suggestion that it made was based on that. That if we notice with our speaker class, it inherits from models.model, which is exactly what we want with a Django class. If I was using ChatGPT, I would have to go to this external tool. I would have to describe the entire scenario, the frameworks that I'm using, eventually get a code suggestion that I would then have to copy and paste over to here. Copilot meets me right where I am and in the tools that I'm already using. If you're using Visual Studio Code, JetBrains, or NeoVim, there's a plugin or extension that's available to you for GitHub Copilot. And you might be wondering, does Copilot obviate developers? Is it going to obviate my job? And the answer is no. You still need to have a developer. Copilot does not generate perfect code. You'll notice in my example here that when it created the reference between my talk and my speaker, it set it such that if we delete a speaker that has a talk, it's gonna delete all of their talks. And that's probably not what I want. So I can go back and make the update to that code to ensure that that's now going to be protected. So that's gonna block a speaker from being deleted if they have a talk. So I can modify all of the code that it generates, and I wanna make sure that I still review it. I also want to ensure that it goes through all of the standard checks that I have for code that I wrote or anybody else wrote that's going to be committed into our code base. This includes our security checks, code quality checks, linting, etc. Copilot is a copilot, not a pilot. And what Copilot will do is allow me as a developer to focus in on the bigger picture. And so if we bring it back to my code one last time here, and let's say I want to register all of those objects, all of those classes that I made with the admin page, I can come over to my admin pie and notice that Copilot, based on all of its training data, based on its sense of my context, starts suggesting the code that I need. So I didn't even need to add in any comments. I didn't need to write any code, and Copilot made all of those suggestions for me. And we see this reflected in the survey data that we get back from developers that have access to GitHub Copilot for Business. 73% report improved job satisfaction, and 87% report a reduction in repetitive code. GitHub Copilot also just reduces the amount of all-up code that I have to write by up to 46% and improves productivity by up to 55%. Of all the things GitHub Copilot for Business can do, what it can't do is replace your role as a software creator. If you want to start playing around with Copilot, you can check out that URL on the screen, which will bring you to a curated environment where you can explore the magic of GitHub Copilot for yourself.
Audio Jungle.